Hey guys, what's going on? Zazubaar here, and today I am here to do a non-spoiler review of Jurassic World. My initial thoughts after just having seen the movie last night at the midnight opening for the brand new sequel to Jurassic Park. So, a couple things right off the bat here before we get going. Number one, I want to apologize for the quality of my voice. I'm not really feeling that great today. I'm working through kind of a summer cold, so I'm not feeling that good, and my voice is a little bit nasally, so I do apologize for that. But it shouldn't affect this video too much. I felt most of it yesterday, but I'm still not feeling that great, so it's definitely going to affect my voice, so I apologize for that. Other thing, doing this review non-spoiler, as I usually do for movies when they first come out, but especially for Jurassic World, for two reasons. One, the movie technically just came out today. So, last night was the, I just touched my microphone, apologies. Last night was the release, was the opening night, but tonight is technically, today and tonight are technically opening days, so I'm sure a lot of you guys haven't seen it yet. As I've seen on Facebook, people have kind of been posting, oh, anybody who's seen Jurassic World, don't write anything about it, please, because we haven't seen it yet because we're going this weekend, so I'm going to do a non-spoiler for that reason as well, because I'm sure a lot of you guys haven't seen it yet. But then the other reason is because I'm going to be doing a spoiler analysis, long-form kind of video with a couple of the SOS guys to do our spoiler thoughts on this movie. So it's going to be me, Dylan, Andres, and Adam. Probably not David, because he doesn't like doing videos ever. So, no, he just probably won't be able to make it. And I'm not sure when he's seeing. I haven't even spoken to him about it. So I think it's just going to be us four, and we're going to do a long-form spoiler review of Jurassic World, get into every single nitty-gritty part of the movie. And I also want to wait to do that after I've had the opportunity to watch it again, because, as I just said, just watched it last night for the first time at the midnight premiere. So I want to see it again, let it sink in a little bit, and then we'll do the spoiler review. So this is just going to be my initial gut reactions to the movie. So this was kind of a perfect time for a new Jurassic Park movie to come out, and a perfect time for me to watch one, because I have been hugely into Jurassic Park recently. Mostly, of course, in preparation for the upcoming film. I've watched all the movies again, most of them more than once, particularly the first two. And I've also been reading the first two books, or the only two books, by Michael Crichton, the original Jurassic Park and The Lost World, its sequel. I haven't finished reading The Lost World yet. When I do, I'm planning on doing a review of both books, so look out for that coming soon. I'm about halfway through The Lost World, and I'm not sure when I'm going to finish it, but hopefully sooner rather than later, while Jurassic Park is still kind of topical. I'd like to get those reviews out. So I kind of went into this movie basically perfect in terms of being really into the franchise and being ready to enjoy a new installment in it, because holy shit, it has been 14 years since Jurassic Park 3 came out. 14 years since I went to a movie theater to watch a Jurassic Park movie. I know that Jurassic Park was re-released in theaters 2 years ago to mark the 20th anniversary. I did not go to that showing for reasons that I don't remember, but I just remember I didn't go. So this is the first time I have seen a Jurassic Park movie in theaters in 14 years, since I was a very, very young boy. So I was 7 years old when Jurassic Park 3 came out. That movie made a huge impact on me when I saw it in theaters. I loved it when I was a kid. If you've been rewatching the reviews that I've been reposting over the past week of my Jurassic Park Reviews miniseries that I did back when Jurassic Park turned 20 years old, you'll know that I don't really feel that way about Jurassic Park 3 now. Not that I completely agree with that review that I did 2 years ago, but I mostly agree with the sentiments that I expressed towards that film. So going into this movie, my expectations were a little bit mixed, because I was really excited about it because, again, new Jurassic Park thing. It's been a long time since we've had that, so I was excited to get into it for that reason. But also because, you know, it's a Jurassic Park sequel, and the two that we've had haven't exactly been amazing. I like The Lost World a lot more than most people do. I think it's actually fairly strong, which is not a popular opinion. And I think Jurassic Park 3 is pretty much a complete waste of time. But, so, my expectations were a little bit mixed. So, in terms of this being a sequel, but also in terms of it just being a movie, and in terms of the trailers that I saw from it, building up to the release. Starting, I think we got the first trailer in November of last year, and that was the first time we saw anything from it concrete. And I remember really enjoying it, but I was also really worried that it was going to fall into a lot of the same traps that the two sequels did prior to this with The Lost World and with Jurassic Park 3. Just in terms of pacing-wise and kind of the tropes of the genre, there were some concerns I had that started when I initially saw that trailer and then kind of continued, and in many regards kind of got worse as I saw more and more from the movie, particularly the global trailer. When I first saw the Jurassic World global trailer, I did not like it. I was really kind of worried that this movie might suck. So, with all that out of the way, sorry I keep hitting the microphone. I haven't done a solo review in a while, so I'm not really quite used to this setup yet. So, with all that out of the way, let's just dive right in, because again, we'll get more into detail with this when we do the spoiler review. But let's just dive into the non-spoiler thoughts. So, Jurassic World, initial thoughts, here we go. So, I definitely did really enjoy this movie, and the big thing I walked out of it with, in terms of having just watched all three of the original Jurassic Park movies, it is leaps and bounds better than 3. And that was kind of, in a regard, that was all I really wanted from it, was it to be better than 3, because it kind of, I really don't like Jurassic Park 3, and I was like, if this movie can be better than Jurassic Park 3, then I think that that's certainly something to boast about. If it can be better than The Lost World, then that's even better. But ultimately, I think everybody who went into this knew, everybody who's a Jurassic Park fan, everybody who's ever even seen Jurassic Park knew that this was not going to be better than the original Jurassic Park. It couldn't possibly be. And I mean, I think I'm going to make the assertion that I can never prove, as long as they continue to make Jurassic Park movies, that no Jurassic Park movie, sequel, remake, reboot, reimagining, whatever the fuck you want to call it, will ever be made that will top Steven Spielberg's original movie. So, I don't think that'll ever happen. Again, I can't necessarily prove that as long as they continue to make Jurassic Park movies, which does seem like they're going to be doing, and based on how massive the opening night was for Jurassic World, I think that's a safe bet. So I didn't in any way expect to go into this and walk out of it liking it more than the original. It's simply impossible. But if anything, this movie is definitely comparing itself more to the original than The Lost World or even Jurassic Park 3 did, in terms of style and tone and the story itself. If you follow me on Facebook, you know that there was a little bit of a scare recently that this movie was going to be kind of a soft reboot and was going to ignore the events of The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 and just kind of be a direct sequel to the original. The director said that wasn't the case, that it is, for all intents and purposes, Jurassic Park 4, but the movie really could function in that way, given the plot that happens in the film. It really doesn't make any references to Jurassic Park 2 or 3, or The Lost World, rather, and Jurassic Park 3, though those events are still canonical, I suppose, must be. You know, it's not like this is Jurassic Park 2, kind of. Though, again, it is certainly more of a spiritual sequel to the original than it is to The Lost World or Jurassic Park 3. So, it is definitely an enjoyable movie. I went into it really knowing that, I mean, it's a Jurassic Park movie, it's got dinosaurs in it, it's going to be entertaining, and it absolutely was. This movie was an absolute riot. It's absolutely a pulse-pounding action-adventure movie, and it really, really satisfies as a Hollywood summer blockbuster. It's wildly entertaining. There are some really, really funny parts of it. It's paced very, very well. For the most part, there are a couple of issues in terms of pacing that I don't think I'm really going to get into now. I'll probably save that for the spoiler review. But this movie doesn't have perfect pacing, but it is quite good in terms of moving everything along at a nice clip. So it does function well as an action movie, but I hesitate. And probably a lot of you will either think I'm an idiot or just completely disagree with me. I can't bring myself to say that I like this movie more than The Lost World. And again, you're talking to somebody who really, really likes The Lost World in a way that a lot of people don't. but I can't bring myself to say that I think it's a better movie than The Lost World, in terms of comparing it to the franchise. But it didn't really do enough to me that was necessarily any more well done than Spielberg did in his sequel, because it kind of suffered from some of the same problems. And if anything, this is certainly a closer movie. Again, if anything, this is a closer movie to the original Jurassic Park than it is to either of the sequels. But in terms of execution of certain ideas, it does definitely suffer from some of the same problems as The Lost World, in terms of setting up some really interesting ideas and then not taking the proper time to develop them. That was the major problem that I had with it, was that this movie is filled with really interesting ideas. And as most Jurassic Park movies are, with the third movie as a pretty big exception to that, as I mentioned in my review, there are some nuggets in there. But this movie is super interesting in terms of some of the science fiction ideas it brings to the table. The problem is that it just doesn't spend enough time developing them. It does spend some time, and there's quite a bit of lengthy... there's certainly a lengthy bit of time. I don't think this is a spoiler, so... you're watching a Jurassic Park movie, at some point, things need to fall apart, and it needs to turn into a survival horror movie, and of course that happens in this movie. And it doesn't necessarily happen too quickly, because there is a lot of time spent with everything prior to that. It really does, and again, I have to watch it again to see if this still holds true, but I remember it taking its time. It felt like it took its time. Maybe I'll completely disagree with that when I watch it again, but that's kind of what I took away from it, was that it was slow enough to make us feel the weight of the new ideas that it brings to the franchise, mainly in regard to, we have a functioning park now, because that is the really original thing that this movie brings to the series, is that it's not about a failed theme park. It's about a theme park that is a complete success, that has been a success for over a decade now, and we're now watching it then fall apart because of its attempt to rejuvenate itself. That's the plot of the movie, and that's the premise of the movie, and that's a really interesting premise, though it runs into a little bit of trouble for me as a fan, because it almost works better if you just know a little bit about the original Jurassic Park and then don't have a huge stake in the whole franchise, because the thing that I wanted it to do, that it doesn't really feel the need to do, and this would have been really hard given the story that we have, is both, because if you know anything about narrative and studying narrative in film, you're supposed to set up a world in balance before the status quo is broken. Take the original Jurassic Park, for instance. The world in balance is, Alan Grant's your average paleontologist. He's digging up bones, and he's then introduced to the status quo breaker, which is this company has cloned dinosaurs, and they've developed this theme park. And to a certain extent, Jurassic Park is kind of a movie that has multiple status quos for different characters, because I guess you could also make the argument that the world in balance is also Jurassic Park being built in a controlled environment where nothing's really going wrong, and then of course things go wrong, and the status quo is kind of broken in that way when the storm hits and Nedry shuts down all the power. So it's kind of debatable as to where the status quo is, but anyway, that's kind of beside the point. With Jurassic World, the status quo is the park operating, is Jurassic World itself working, is receiving, I think they say something like 10,000 or more patrons, a lot of people. It's a very popular park, but patronage has been declining, which again is the reason why they create the hybrid, the Indominus Rex. So the world in balance is also kind of the park working. But the thing is, as a fan, I was looking to have the existence and the operation of the park being built up to in and of itself. Because, again, it's been 14 years since we've had a Jurassic Park movie, and the last time we did, Jurassic Park was a dead dream, and we don't really get to see that dead dream be reignited. It's mentioned. The guy who purchases InGen and then reactivates the Jurassic Park kind of plan in terms of bringing John Hammond's dream to life is Mr. Masrani, played by, what's his name? Idris Khan. He was the guy who played Norman Osborn's right-hand man in The Amazing Spider-Man, and he was also the older version of Pi in The Life of Pi. He's a great actor, and he's fantastic in this movie. By the way, that as well, the cast is fantastic in this movie. So definitely look forward to that as well. And you really need that in a Jurassic Park movie because all three films, by and large, have really good actors in the cast. Even three, even though I don't like the cast of characters, the actors are all good. William H. Macy, Sam Neill, everybody else whose names I don't remember. And then, of course, you have the original and Lost World, which also have great casts as well, especially the original. And this movie is, again, as I keep saying, harkening mostly back to the original Jurassic Park, and its cast is mostly kind of a mix of the characters in that. So you've got Owen Grady, played by Chris Pratt, who's kind of a mix of Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm. And then you've got what's her name? Claire, who's played by Bryce Dallas Howard, who's, again, kind of a weird mix of different characters. She's Laura Dern in the sense that she's the main female character, and she's kind of the love interest. I don't know if that's a spoiler. If it's a spoiler, I apologize. It's not a major one. And she's also kind of like, she's a little bit of the lawyer, I guess, in that she's this pencil pushing kind of park head. So she's kind of Gennaro in that sense, and also a little bit. She's also in and of herself a little bit of John Hammond. Although I think definitely more of the comparison is to Gennaro, but she's also kind of her own character. But just in terms of the functionality of the characters in the cast, though obviously Alan Grant and Gennaro weren't love interests. So, and then of course in the John Hammond role, you definitely have Mr. Masrani, who is again played by Idris Khan, is again, I think, his name. And he's fantastic. He's really, really fun. His performance is very much so reminiscent of the way Richard Attenborough, David Attenborough is his brother, Richard Attenborough played the original John Hammond. Very kind of as kind of a showman, as kind of a fun-loving, kind of park runner, kind of a Walt Disney type, and always wants to have fun. He's introduced in a fun way, and he's kind of given that through the whole movie. But he also has a lot of John Hammond in him in terms of being a showman and in terms of the lying and kind of ignorance that can go along with that in terms of the actual functionality of your dream. So his character is definitely a little bit... He's definitely... I would say he's maybe a little bit derivative of John Hammond, but John Hammond not being in this movie directly, of course, since Richard Attenborough passed away a year or two ago, it is kind of nice to have an analog for him in there. And he's younger. He's a different of enough character where it doesn't come off like a ripoff. So I was fine with him in that way. But in terms of things being derivative, I want to talk about this, and then I think that'll pretty much be it. Maybe we'll talk about a few more things. But this is the last major criticism I have that I want to bring up now. This movie is derivative in both good and bad ways. Because derivative is kind of a weird word, because it immediately brings up a negative connotation in your mind, because derivative means derivative of other things similar to this, meaning it kind of borrows and steals things from other like things. So in this case, this movie kind of borrows, steals, and just follows the specific path of other films like this. So in terms of the good, because I think things can be derivative in a good way, especially when it's genre fiction. Genre fiction can be derivative, and it can be really fun and also help the piece if it's derivative in the sense of using different things that always happen in movies like this. So in monster movies, there are certain things that have to happen in a monster movie. It started with the original Frankenstein, with all these original monster movies, Godzilla, all these different things. They're derivative of each other, but in a charming way, where if you love this genre, these things constantly crop up, and it's this sense of comfort. This sense of we know what world we're playing in, it's comforting, and it's really good at kind of recapturing what made the genre great to begin with. And I think that in many regards, this movie completely succeeds at that, and that's part of why I enjoyed it so much, was because it was really good at being positively derivative of the original Jurassic Park, but also of kind of classic 80s and 90s science fiction horror. By and large, for the most part, with a few exceptions. But those positive derivative things in the score, in the presentation, in kind of the atmosphere, that was very derivative of the original Jurassic Park. I was really into it, and it really grabbed me, and it made me comforted to know what world we were playing in. So it was good derivative in that sense, and not so much like, oh, they're just ripping off the original Jurassic Park. Like I accuse, and will always hate, Superman Returns for, of ripping off the original Richard Donner Superman films. Now, bringing up Superman Returns, that movie was definitely in the back of my mind while I was watching this one, because hearing what it was going to be from the director Colin Trevorrow, of, I'm making a spiritual successor to Jurassic Park, I'm ignoring the sequels, Jurassic Park is kind of like my Jurassic Park, my dinosaur movie, so my movie is going to be a successor to that film, and that film alone, and this movie, if you don't like the original Jurassic Park, you're not going to like this movie, which I guess is true, so if you don't like Jurassic Park, you're probably not going to like this movie, because it's mostly playing it safe in terms of being in line with the original Jurassic Park. So, in terms of... But back to what I was saying, I was getting a little worried that he was going to be so keen on staying with the foundation of the Jurassic Park franchise that the original set up, that he didn't want to stray too far from it, and stick so close to the original Jurassic Park that he wouldn't take any risks in terms of expanding the universe, and kind of opening up the canvas to see more than just what the original showed us. And I think that this movie might be guilty of that a little bit, but not to the extent that Superman Returns was. And the whole premise is in and of itself taking risks that the original didn't. And not that the original didn't, and it should be criticized for that it didn't, because it was the setup movie of this universe and of this idea, that this film should then be expanding upon, as I feel The Lost World did, to varying degrees. And I think this movie is probably is a little bit more successful at it than The Lost World was, but it definitely still suffers from issues. So I think it straddles that line between being super negatively derivative and then homage derivative, where it's derivative of the original Jurassic Park in a purposeful way in terms of homaging the original. But let's talk about the bad derivative, because this movie is also suffers from that quite a bit, especially in the last two acts. So once everything falls apart, and even before that a little bit, in terms of the park falling apart and the survival horror stuff starts, it does become derivative in a way where it doesn't feel like it's being done on purpose as homage, but it feels like it's being done because, well, it's a genre movie, so it's got to follow these specific notes, otherwise people won't pay money to see it. And for guys and gals who are looking for a little bit more in our entertainment and in our big Hollywood action movies that don't just play it safe and stick to the safe formulas, this movie might not scratch those itches in a way that you might want it to. It definitely suffers from sticking very close to not only the conventions of the genre that it's playing in, because as I said a minute ago, that can be a cool thing, and it does do that, but just in terms of modern Hollywood action movies, that was the biggest problem that I had with this movie, was that it was too derivative of modern Hollywood action movies, and seemed to have this really bad identity crisis of trying to stay true to the spirit of the original Jurassic Park and try to make it feel like it was still in that world while also making it stand up to modern Hollywood action movies. And I don't mean that if this movie was fully faithful to the original Jurassic Park and stayed completely within how that movie presented its story and progressed and was made and everything, that it wouldn't stand up to modern Hollywood action movies, but that the filmmakers feel that it won't and are scared that mainstream audiences won't accept it if it doesn't stick close to that. They were terrified of that, I can tell, because it really walks that line and kind of falters while it's walking it in terms of making a Jurassic Park movie that feels in line with the original, and definitely to a certain extent the original 3, and also making a movie that feels like a movie made in 2015. And that bugged me a lot. a lot of it in terms of the special effects, in terms of the cinematography. There were like 3 instances of shaky cam in this movie, and every time it happened, it was super, super distracting. Having just rewatched the original 3 Jurassic Parks, I don't think there were many cases of shaky cam. You know what? I think Spielberg actually used it a little bit. Of course, it wasn't a thing they did back then, but I think there was actually a little bit of it in The Lost World, and I hated it. So, excuse me. I wasn't exactly thrilled that that was present here as well. But being somebody who has a lot of problems with the way movies are made nowadays, I wasn't thrilled to see that crop up here. Though I definitely expected that it would be an issue, especially based on those trailers. So it definitely suffers from that in terms of, for a couple things, it just, again, it feels super cliched in terms of watching it, in terms of also watching all these other modern action movies where it just feels like, okay, clearly they're trying to rip off this other thing, especially one very recent film that also plays in this genre that this movie heavily borrowed from, and it probably shouldn't have. I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. You know. And in terms of being in line with the original Jurassic Park, that, you know, I wanted this film to feel like I could pop in Jurassic Park and then pop this in, and it wouldn't feel like there was too much of a gap, and it would still feel like we were playing in that universe. I think it doesn't necessarily succeed at that, and that really bothers me because that was a lot of the intention. So I think they made a good effort, a really strong effort, but simply because of the fears that they had to go a step beyond and really make it feel in line with that movie and not try and incorporate all the cliches of a modern-day action movie, they would have been more successful at it. So I think that this movie definitely deserves merit for attempting to do that and attempting to do it in the ways that it did, because every time it did do it, I was really happy with it. And I had a smile on my face all through this movie, so that really tells me that it was kind of what I needed. It definitely deserves merit for it. It just doesn't get all the way there as I think it wanted to and as I think it should have. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with it in that specific respect. But again, this movie had a smile on my face the whole time, so I can't really say that, you know, I was that disappointed by it because I'd be lying. With that being said, we're pretty far in, and this is longer than I wanted it to be. So let's wrap up with the final thing I want to briefly touch on, because I don't want to spoil it too much, because I think it's a lot of why this movie is so entertaining. The action sequences, the horror elements, and of course the dinosaurs. So let me just say this: the special effects, as I suspected, are kind of varied. A lot of the CGI is fantastic. It looks good for modern day CG effects. It holds well to all the conventions of good modern day, computer generated images and how we bring living creatures to life. It's clearly very much so taking a look at Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and the 2014 Godzilla, and kind of borrowing things from that to make this movie stand up to those kind of high caliber productions. But again, this movie is also really trying hard to stick close to the original Jurassic Park, and since Jurassic Park is in and of itself the first movie to make extensive use of CGI living creatures, and the first movie to revolutionize, and in a certain respect, design modern-day Hollywood action movies, it does do its best to stick close to that and make use as much as it can of animatronic dinosaurs. It doesn't do it enough to my personal liking. I think there's way too much CGI in this movie, not just for the dinosaurs, but also just for the environments. This is just a way too CG-heavy movie, and some of it really doesn't look good. Again, a lot of it looks fantastic. The raptors look really good. They're very expressive a lot of the time, especially at night. The Indominus Rex itself, the brand new hybrid dinosaur, looks spectacular in every scene that it is in. So it's obvious that that dinosaur is the one that they put the most focus on. It looks fantastic. Sadly, some of the other dinosaurs kind of get lost in the shuffle. There are a couple of really big wide shots that expansively show the park and some of the dinosaurs in it, and some of those don't look so good. And I'm going to try and say this without spoiling it. There is kind of a big deal made out of a dinosaur in the third act that should be made a big deal out of, that doesn't quite look as good as it should. And it's a little bit disappointing for that, but no less epic when it does make its appearance. So I won't say anything more than that, but it does not look amazing. And that was definitely a little bit problematic. But let me just say this, the sound effects were spot on. All the dinosaurs' roar sounds sounded just like they should. As a part of this franchise, the raptors sounded great. The T-Rex sounded great. What else did we see? We didn't see any Brachiosauruses in the movie, but you heard them, and their sounds were also spot on with what they were in the original. All the dinosaurs sounded great. Even the pterosaurs, who got pretty much as shafted as they did in Jurassic Park 3, and they also don't look that great CGI-wise. I don't mean to crap on this movie special effects-wise, because again, it looks really good when it should look really good, and it does effectively, you know, kind of create a suspenseful and horrific atmosphere with its special effects. So it's not a bad-looking movie, it just doesn't look as good as it should. And comparing it to the original, I mean, the original still just holds up in a way that none of the sequels do, and this one is no exception to that. The animatronics, when they are used, they look amazing. Even better in some respects than the first one. I mean, Jesus Christ, there was the raptor animatronics were amazing when they were used, as well as some of the other dinosaurs when you could tell. They were really, really fantastic. But I think this movie not having Stan Winston behind it definitely hurt it. Not that that's their fault, obviously, since he passed away, but you could definitely feel that he was being missed while they were doing the special effects. So, kind of disappointed to say that. This is a Jurassic Park movie. The one thing you should walk away unquestionably is, you know, oh, the special effects are amazing. Sadly, didn't walk away feeling that. So, that's a little bit disappointing. But it does certainly hold up in other respects that the special effects fall short of. So, definitely not bad, but not as good as you'd like them to be. So that's a little bit disappointing. But again, the scenes where it should look really good, it does. So that certainly should be mentioned as well. So I think that's all I'm going to say for now. We'll come back to Jurassic World in the next few days, of course, when we have the full crew together, talk spoilers, get all into the nitty-gritty details, and hold on to your butts for more Jurassic World videos from me, Zazubaar, in the coming days. And I promise that soon I will stop posting exclusively Jurassic Park videos on my channel, as it's been going for the past week or so, including the last episode of The Demons from Outer Space. Although the next episode of SOS will break that chain, since I don't think we talked about Jurassic World on there. So, if you don't like Jurassic Park and you're subscribed to me, sorry, but, you know, it's Jurassic Park, so, and a new movie just came out, so I had to celebrate in kind. So, I'm wondering if I should I have my rating ready, so, you know, I might as well give it now, and I'll give it again, and it might alter itself anyway when I do my spoiler analysis with the guys. So, I'll give my rating now, and again, this is subject to change after I watch it again, but for the moment, I am going to give Jurassic World a 3.5 out of 5. Might sound high, might sound low, depending on your perspective. I know this movie was pretty polarizing, a lot of people didn't like it. It's been getting, by and large, mixed to negative reviews, so I might be unpopular for liking it as much as I did, but I truly did enjoy it a lot. But I'm a guy who really likes The Lost World as well, so shoot me. I've got weird taste, so fuck you. Anyway, but if you love Jurassic World, then don't fuck you. But if you didn't like it either, don't fuck you as well. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I can't hate a movie that made me smile as much as I did watching Jurassic World. So we'll see if that holds when I watch it again. But that's my perspective for now. If you are on the fence, I would definitely recommend seeing it in theaters anyway, because it is an entertaining movie, and I think that even if you're a little bit worried in terms of you didn't like the sequels to Jurassic Park and you didn't like the trailers to this movie, I do think that there will be something to entertain you in here if you're a big fan of the original and you're looking for something to kind of scratch that itch for you. This definitely succeeds in that, so it's entertaining as all fuck. So I don't think very few people will walk away from this movie not getting anything out of it. It's pretty entertaining. It's pretty well designed as a film, unlike Jurassic Park in and of itself as a theme park idea. it's definitely entertaining. I would definitely recommend watching it in theaters. You know, that's probably the only way you'll get the really best experience from it that you possibly could. The sound design is spectacular, as I mentioned, so to see it for that alone. And you can't beat a theater experience, so definitely go ahead and check it out while it's still in theaters. And be sure to give it a watch. So, but if you don't like the original Jurassic Park, and you're not somebody who really likes big, loud dinosaur movies with a lot of action, and kind of skipping out on characterization for the human cast, then you might not dig this movie fully, because again, I said I like the cast. They're not exactly the deepest bunch, so yeah, that's certainly an issue as well. So if you're looking for an in-depth character study of Owen Grady, this is not your piece. I do recommend that you should see it, though, for the exciting action sequences and the ambiance, because that's all fantastic, as well as some really funny moments with the human characters. So, I do recommend you see it. I didn't see it in 3D, so I don't know if that's any good, but I'm not a fan of 3D regardless of anything, so don't take my word on that. It might be great, and I just don't care because I think it's all horrible. So, yeah. Go ahead and watch Jurassic World. I really loved it, but sound off in the comments on what you thought, because I'm interested to see what you out there in my subscriber base thought, who are all... A lot of you are Jurassic Park fans yourselves. You're big Kaiju fans, so I'd like to hear your thoughts on this film. Because, again, I know it was really polarizing. So if you hated it, go ahead and hate it. If you loved it, go ahead and love it. And if you liked it like me, go ahead and like it. So that's all for now. I'll see you guys in the coming days for my spoiler analysis. So until next time, I'm Bill Worster, a.k.a. Zazubaar, to remind you that I spared no expense. Have a good day, kids.